Hey, what's up, guys? So, I haven't been making a ton of videos because, quite frankly, it's a ton of work. The editing and the thumbnails is pretty awful, and I'm super busy just trading and doing generalized bull market stuff. Have an actual job outside of YouTube, even though I'm trying to grow YouTube. Um, but I figured I might experiment and try something. Basically, the TLDR of it would be that I might kind of do just these raw, unedited, just stream of consciousness videos where I'm basically doing what I'm doing anyway here on a Monday morning or any morning, which is kind of going over the charts and trying to figure out what's happening in markets and making some sort of game plan. So I don't know how these are going to look. I don't know how fun they're going to be to watch. And a lot of the stuff in here might age poorly because it's going to be pretty just stream of consciousness. But if people find these useful, I can maybe put out more of them because if I'm not making thumbnails, if I'm not editing, I'm just sort of narrating what I'm doing anyway. It's not taking away too much from what I'm normally doing. So so yeah, let's jump in. I'll just talk about what I'm thinking right now. Um, it's a bit of a weird week in markets. We've got a Thanksgiving holiday, and holiday weeks tend to sometimes behave a little weird. Um, Nothing too crazy on the economic calendar this week. Kind of like a standard array of red folder news. I'm currently thinking about some past Thanksgivings. Like I feel like there's been Thanksgivings in the past where there's been like a crypto massacre. I'm not sure if I remember that correctly. I want to try to find some past Thanksgivings here. When was last Thanksgiving? 27 on there. Not too much happening last year. Yeah, it was okay. It was 2021. Yeah, I mean we were just we were getting nuked there in 2021, and I feel like 2020 we also had some gnarly Thanksgiving price action. May have been to the upside though. No, no, yeah, yeah, we nuked super hard on Thanksgiving. So yeah, in the back of my head, I'm like, are we setting up for some sort of Thanksgiving nuke again? And then when I kind of look at some charts at a high level, I do see things that are concerning in the medium term. My charts are all a freaking disaster here. Let me clean this up. Bitcoin. Move drawings. Okay. So this generalized pattern that we've got playing out here is a little bit nerve wracking to me. You kind of see like some might say this is some sort of vertical accumulation. You could also read this as distribution. And I know there's some white coffeeans out there who might look at this and get a little bit alarmed. You sometimes see a pattern play out, right, where large players are distributing in the market, and they sort of push price up, get people excited, distribute some coins, we get back up, push price up again, redistribute some coins, right? And what we have right now is sort of like these equal highs here, you you will often see a pattern where you sort of break out of the consolidation, put in like an equal high or so, and then do something like this where you kind of run this low here. You get everybody excited. Now you're building up a ton of shorts, and then everybody puts their stops above these two equal highs, and then price does this sort of up thrust or up thrust after distribution, depending on how you want to you want to call this exactly. And then we take out all the shorts, and then price ultimately dumps and does something like that. So that's something that's concerning to me at the moment, and you need like a higher time frame context for this to mean anything, right? You don't just see this happen in the middle of nowhere. And on the monthly chart, we do have like just a gigantic supply zone here, of course. But on the weekly, yeah, so stuff you see on the weekly, fair value gap here. And if yeah, it's interesting to note that we did not close the weekly above that gap. So minor sign of weakness. I don't know. And this isn't to say that we're going to go to zero from here, but on the on the weekly, we have put in some very big moves. You're starting to see like wicks form on the weekly, and then this super strong move has become a little choppy. If you pull up the RSI, you're probably getting some divergences here. So if you pull up the daily RSI, I mean, yeah, we were super overcooked. We hit a really high reading there. But then you can see on the RSI, you clearly have lower highs, while we are making higher highs here. So, yeah, that's kind of the setup. But to give it more context, right? When we're swing trading, we're usually trading within like a leg of price action or like a larger swing, and depending on your time frame, right, you could either see this entire thing here, on a high enough time frame. This is just one candle, right? But on lower time frames, this move here is also a swing. And what I try to do when I'm trading, and this is either more for my short-term trades or when I'm trying to sort of, I guess, swing trade on monthly or even yearly time horizons, like throughout a bull market. There's a few questions I'm always asking myself when hopping into a trade. The first is to sort of think about where price is coming from. And on the larger swings, right, this larger swing here, the entire move is basically coming from this consolidation here. All right, so we had a long period of consolidation, accumulation, and we had a manipulation leg down, a spring. Some people might call this whole move here a spring, a deviation, whatever you want to call it. Price sort of manipulates below the range, gets a bunch of people panicked, and then ultimately breaks above, and that's the start of the move. So as far as I'm concerned, this accumulation here is like the origin of this entire move, and it's a worthwhile question asking, like, where is this move going? Now, when I trade stocks, I'm a big fan of using standard deviation projections, which is like a technique you can use with your fib levels. And I'm not going to go into the specifics of that too much because I think it requires kind of its own video. It's something I've been testing in crypto with what I would say like pretty good results, but not quite as clean as it is in stocks. And then it's much cleaner on Bitcoin than it is in Ethereum. And then I think as you get away from Ethereum, like certain pairs don't seem to exhibit this behavior at all. So I feel okay doing it on Bitcoin. I feel pretty good doing it on Ethereum. But other than that, like it's a little iffy. These lower liquidity markets, I think, just trade a lot differently than the S&P 500 or whatever. But yeah, like so in stocks, when I see an accumulation and a manipulation, like what I do is I measure the size of the manipulation leg. So this is the move out of the range here. If I can get this low, there we go. That's a manipulation leg, and then I'm usually targeting the 2 to 2.5 level, and then the 4 to 5 level, depending on the context of what the larger structure looks like. Like if you're in a larger time frame downtrend, for example, you might be more likely to just get like a 2 move, and it's just a retracement leg. Versus if you were starting or you're in the middle of a higher time frame bull cycle, like it's much more likely that a sort of a bullish manipulation might hit the higher mark there. So that's kind of in the back of my mind where I'm thinking about where Bitcoin might go, and I'm not using these numbers like literally like -2 and I got out of the trade. I'm thinking about what sort of like liquidity exists there, right? So if you're talking about, on the weekly chart, there's a few levels you could point out, right? So weekly swing highs are really big targets, right? So when this move happened, and I've talked about this in the past, it was pretty much a given to me that at a minimum we were going to take this high out eventually. And when we sort of fell short here over the summer, right, and everybody was kind of saying like this is going to break down, although I did think it was probably going to wick down into here and come back up, I was fairly certain we weren't going back to new lows because in my mind, this leg up here that we had, didn't reach what it was drawing for, right? Like when price moves, you have these periods of accumulation, and then you have these periods of distribution, and then the large players who are sort of accumulating and distributing price like this, they're taking it to particular levels, and one of the best levels to distribute at if you're a large player is above like a critical high. Because when you get the move above the high, right, you get a lot of breakout traders hopping in, and then that price action becomes like liquidity for people to distribute the coins they accumulated down here, up here in this zone, right? So I saw price having unfinished business, if you will, and now price has definitely, obviously, taken that level. Like we took that level and we took it quite strongly. We had a weekly close above that level. So then you start looking higher for where price ultimately might be going. Like when I see a close above the 2.5 like we've had, that to me is a signal that price probably wants to go for the 4 to 5 level. Again, I'm applying equities techniques here, but I think there's a good case to be made that they work if you back test some of this. And Bitcoin is trading more and more and more like a traditional asset these days. So I expect that to continue. Now that doesn't mean that we just go straight up to those levels. Like you still could have like a retrace after taking these these highs and reaccumulate before going higher. But when I look at what's above the 4 level, what I see is this like really critical monthly swing high here around like 48K. So that's where I feel pretty good at saying that price is ultimately heading. And one thing you want to see is that price is respecting the higher time frame lows on its way to these levels. This is kind of a weak low in my opinion, but nonetheless, this low respected it here. So if we have a pullback here and continue higher, right, that low should hold until you reach like the final destination of this entire leg. Once the entire leg plays out, you will start seeing failures in bullish demand zones, bullish fair value gaps, the types of things that are respected on the way up get disrespected on the way down. And you can kind of see what I mean on the way up here. Like if we look at what price did on the way up, you have highs being taken. All these highs ultimately taken, right? You have fair value gaps on the way down that were previously respected. Price trades through. Ultimately, this last gap as well, this weekly gap is probably also going to be disrespected at some point. And then you can see on the way up, right, you have a gap here. This is respected by this low. You have a gap here. That gap is respected. And now one thing to really look out for is obviously these lows here, this demand zone, like all of this stuff should be respected on a retrace back down before we go up and ultimately take this high. Now, if we do take this high first, right, you can see like lows just taken on the way down. I'm not saying we're going to come down here, but if we put in some, structurally higher highs, right, and then take this level, you could see price break down and take a couple of these lows before continuing back up. But if this happens, you're going to be looking for a new, period of of accumulation in here somewhere. And then I like to look for a similar setup, which is like a manipulation leg, and then a way to kind of hop in and get on board. I know a lot of people will call this like this is a swing fail, an SFP, swing fail pattern. And SFP candles are just simply, manipulation legs on higher, higher time frames or lower time frames, right? But on a higher time frame, they just look like one candle. So this, this move here on a weekly candle is just this sort of, swing fail below these levels. Probably looks the same on a daily candle too, to be honest, because no, not on a daily candle. But if you go on like a 1 hour candle and you identify that, then you can see that what at the time, what on the weekly just looks like a wick, you can see is this kind of manipulation move. And then you can see how price just really continues higher rapidly after that. So something I like to look for when trading. So yeah, Bitcoin overall looks pretty healthy to me from like a zoomed out perspective. And like I said, if I'm looking at this really high time frame accumulation manipulation, I think we have unfinished business here above 48K. I think we ultimately go to 48K. But this isn't super useful by itself because, like I said, the protected lows down here, we could eat like 30% drawdown and still technically be in that higher time frame structure. But obviously eating those kinds of drawdowns is not super fun, especially if you are, you're swing trading and you're managing risk. So you have to kind of zoom in a little bit. And I like to look at what's happening on these individual legs, right, in the context of the larger leg that we're currently doing. So let me just clear some of this out here, I guess, because it's a bit of a mess. So given that I think we are going up here at some point, and I want to remain bullish above 25K or whatever. And again, I'm not necessarily talking about wicks. Crypto trade's a little messy. You can get wicks below critical levels, but we shouldn't have closes below them. I'm still curious what's happening on this leg that we're currently on. So I sometimes drop down to like the 4-hour or the 1-hour chart even, and try to look for signs of what's happening on those charts. And if we're looking at this move here, say on the 12-hour, again, the first question is where are we coming from? Second question, where are we going? Third question, where are we? Those are 3 questions you should be asking. But I see a pretty obvious area of accumulation, like in here. Before we started continuing up. And to be honest, like I'm still torn on how exactly to mark these legs in crypto. Like it could be, some people might want to just use the down candles or put it here on this wick or put it up here. I don't know, but I've been, smaller time frame. Price is fractal, so sometimes these little wicks on the smaller time frames play into, like on a larger time frame, this whole move here, from top to bottom, some might say like this in and of itself is a giant manipulation, and that actually worked pretty well. You had a move up to 2 here before like a reaccumulation and a move higher. But yeah, I'm trying to think like where ultimately this leg is coming from and where it might want to go. And I also like to see like overlap, right? Like here you had confluence with the other legs, 2.5. You have your 2.5 here. So you have like a smaller sort of leg lining up with the projections from a higher time frame leg. It gives you a lot of confidence that this level is going to actually hold here. And there's still some confluence here with this 4 level. It's pretty close to the 4 to 5 zone if you mark it this way. So yeah, I'm kind of thinking that we're near a near-term top right now. I'm not exactly sure where it's going to be. Like an interesting thing, if it plays out, would be like what I talked about, where you have this run and then you put this like kind of higher high up, and then you actually tap this trend line, and then you also tap, the 4. Like that would be a pretty interesting spot for me if we end up doing that. And then yeah, like on a monthly chart, this is something we have to be aware of as well. I mean, we have this enormous monthly order block here. So this entire zone is going to be really tricky for price to get through. I'm not actually insanely confident we're going to take this high like straight away, because like we have to get through this whole zone first. So it would make sense that this leg ultimately runs out of steam somewhere in this monthly supply zone, and you just have this like higher time frame monthly retrace kind of right before the halvening slash ETF and go back up. Like that's completely plausible to me as well. I'm not trying to predict exactly what's going to happen. I'm moving from the higher to the lower time frames, updating my bias with current information as it happens, and trying to sort of ascertain what scenarios might play out and how I might react to those scenarios. So I'm usually, if I want to go long or short, I might have a long scenario and a short scenario. I'm not sitting there thinking like I want to go long and I only look for long setups, or I want to go short and I only look for long for short setups. It's kind of like a recipe for disaster. You really want to observe what price is doing, and then when you're kind of sure what price is doing, where it's coming from, where it's going, then you look for price spots to sort of hop on board the train. And on the for you higher time frame folks, for you people trading over multiple cycles, like where do I want to hop on the train if I'm you? Well, I'm looking at this. This is basically like a monthly breaker here. Like if I can get price here, sub 30K, 25 to 30K, that to me is a real dream. Like if price retraces into this zone, like I'm just DCAing if I'm a long-term investor all through this zone. If we lose this level, like that's probably bad news. That's really bad news. Like to me that would put the lows back in play if we were to do that, because then like I'm just thinking this whole thing is just one retracement leg up into supply, and then we're gonna finish a move into this previous demand, which we sort of tapped into, but didn't really. I'm of the mindset, generally speaking, more broadly speaking, that this entire move up and this entire move down is actually just a retracement of like a much higher time frame like bubble. Like I have a similar view in stocks. And when you have price trading, right, where it's like aggressively moving, say in like a bullish direction towards a target, it's very common for price to not just retrace into clean like demand zones like this before going higher. Right, like a good example of that, you need to look no further than the last bull run. Like once price started moving, it just sent, right? It didn't give you any clean retraces into demand. And when price moves very, very quickly and very, very hard, you often just have to enter on the gaps or retracements to the very tops of zones instead of in getting clean tests into the middle of them. And if you kind of zoom in on the you zoom in on the daily chart for this leg up, it's like, yeah, when we started the cycle, right, you had this accumulation, you had this demand zone, price moved up here, right? But it never re-entered this demand zone. Like the best you got was this retest of this fair value gap. Not even like the lower gap, just the uppermost gap here. And we tap that, and then boom, like price just absolutely leaves the train without you. So what's happening here could be similar to what is happening on the very high time frame with Bitcoin, right? Where like if I clean all of this up, if you believe as I do that this is just a gigantic move up like this towards 100K and beyond, then everything that we're seeing, or we have been seeing in this bull market, all of this pain, right, all of this carnage, on a high enough time frame, it's just a retracement leg, right? And like I said, when you get any sort of retracement from like a very, very, very powerful move, right? You can call this last entire swing down from the last cycle peak to the low a demand zone where we had accumulation. Typically, when moves are moving a little slower, you might look to the 50% of a zone as evidence that that zone has sort of been mitigated and price can safely move out of that. But you can see we didn't tap that at all, right? But this could be just what I'm talking about here. Like on a 3-month chart, you have a bullish fair value gap. And we do tap the fair value gap on the 3-month. And I believe this is just a test of this imbalance, and we're just going to new highs now. Of course, this is a 3-month chart. You have crazy swings on 3-month charts, but this is like the really high time frame, thesis that's driving what I'm doing here. Anyway, back to the monthly. I'm really curious how the month ends up closing out. This is a monthly gap I've been targeting for a while. Be interesting to see if we end up closing through this gap, which would be an incredibly bullish sign. Closing above the consequent encroachment, the 50% mark. You can see that was basically resistance for the October move. Closing back below that would be not super great in my mind. You would end up with this kind of really nasty wick up, and that would be a pretty good sign that you might have like a bloody December or January. But for now, pretty strong on the monthly chart. Like I said, I just see some concerns here when looking at the 4-hour. It is true that we're still in bullish structure, right? Like if you pull up like a 12-hour chart here, it's been nothing like that technically bearish happening. Like here's your demand that created the new high. You have your structural low here, which is still intact. So no real reason from this perspective to believe that we're going lower at the moment. Again, I'm just thinking ahead to some sort of distributive structure that could be forming in the context of where we're trading on like these higher time frame PD arrays or supply zones in this instance, and then in context of the fact that like some of these legs, the shorter term legs that we're moving from, they may have had like a lot of their move already take place. Like if you believe this is sort of the manipulation leg here on the daily, because it's kind of clean on the daily. You basically have a this would suggest 41K, which is a decent amount higher here. This one basically would just be this move, so I'm not really looking at that anymore. Yeah, I don't know. Not super eager to get leveraged long at the moment. Definitely looking for spots to be careful. There's a lot of alts I want to accumulate lower. Definitely not super keen on buying alts right here. Let's talk about Ethereum, I guess, for a minute, because that's sort of like is what flows next here from Bitcoin. Because it's possible that Bitcoin could sort of stall out here for a while and everything could be fine and we could start going higher in alts. I've been talking about this Ethereum structure for a while. If you've seen my videos or followed me on Twitter, you've seen me talking about this. I mean, the range lows, demand here. Everybody thinks we're going down here. It's certainly possible, but like again, I saw like a structure break here. I see a retrace. This aligns nicely up with January seasonality. I think an ETH ETF is coming, if a Bitcoin ETF is coming, and I think Ethereum is going to do much better than Bitcoin in that scenario. So all of these things are playing into my bias for looking for a reversal here around the 0.053 or so level. And then on the daily chart, if we zoom in, we did see a pretty bullish development, right? We had a very strong break of that bearish structure, right? And obviously price hasn't been great in recent days, but when I look at this, like I see people panicking about Ethereum, look, this is just the demand that gave you the structure break. Like this is a totally normal price move. So if you think this is a reversal, then any sort of buying that you can do in this zone here, is going to potentially be a really great trade. So I see nothing to panic about in this chart from like a technical price action perspective. And if anything, it makes me pretty damn bullish on Ethereum. It's a great place to be bullish on Ethereum, because if you're wrong, it's not that much lower if you're wrong, right? Whereas if you wait to buy all the way up at 0.07, and that ends up being just a higher time frame retrace, and we go lower, now you really eat it. But if you buy here, you can kind of get out here and then just be like, okay, I guess this is going lower, and then maybe look to accumulate 0.035 or so, should things get ugly. But I like to do my business around inflection points where I have a lot of upside, and I know that I'm wrong very quickly. And in reality here, the upside is the flippening, which is quite the trade higher, because that would take us to 0.157, 0.16 and beyond. So as like also a person who's thinking about capital gains and investing on longer horizons as well as trading, like I have to think about where price might be a year from now, when I might want to start taking profits, and I don't want to be taking profits at 50% or whatever. I want to take profits at 20, 25%. Like when I put that all into play, like I really like the outlook a year from now from here. But on the lower time frames, and looking at ETH specifically, let's talk about ETH specifically here. Like the ETH monthly chart doesn't look as good as the Bitcoin monthly chart, because there's been no structural shift on the monthly chart, because your monthly high is here and then your lower low is here. So in reality, below 35.85 on the monthly, we don't have a shift. But that's not good enough for a trading signal. Like I can't wait until ETH goes to 4,000 to buy it. So I'm using Bitcoin as sort of like a bellwether for what's going to be happening with ETH. Main concern right now on the higher time frame with ETH is that we're basically delivering off of a monthly fair value gap. Oftentimes you see these fair value gap to fair value gap trades, and that's sort of what we've been bouncing in between at the moment. So it's entirely plausible that price can reject here and then go back down a decent amount. How low is a more interesting question. I think with ETH, I've been asking myself the same question that that I ask on any trade really, but that we were just talking about Bitcoin. Where are we coming from? Where are we going? Where are we? The ETH accumulation manipulation is not as clean as Bitcoin's, but I when I look at this chart, I see a few areas, right? I see. Obviously here, this is sort of your pre-FTX, and who knows, maybe we were destined to go up from here, but then we had this final accumulation right here. So it's been a lot of periods of kind of sub 1,400 or so accumulation for ETH, And as for looking for, manipulations, if you will, we're kind of zeroing in here is like the most interesting one to me, depending on where you want to mark this wick. So that's like a really high time frame one for me, that puts targets 2.5, around like 3,000, which I think is a great level. I think this level here is going to be super interesting. 29.69. I think that this entire order block here, is a place where I would very heavily be considering taking profits. I'm already looking ahead to this. This is basically falls squarely in the the 2 standard deviation move, and if you notice, this is the last up move before we had a really impulsive move down. So we're probably going to get a pretty strong reaction over this area, in this area. If not the top, I hope it's not the top, but if not the top, potentially like a pretty severe pullback. All of these zones can be absolutely blown through, right? If particular news events happen in the market that the market was not anticipating or pricing in before, all of these lines can just be, rendered obsolete. But until that happens, they're pretty useful for me to be looking at. So yeah, I'm looking at like 2,800 or so, 2,883, and then 4,000 as a round number is also pretty interesting to me. Can look on like weekly, monthly time frames, see if there's like anything significant around these levels. Yeah, we do have a weekly order block here right at the 4, so that'll be interesting. And then obviously we're anticipating reactions off of these really high time frame swing highs as well. But for ETH, like this level is sort of it's just kind of in the middle of each of these critical areas, so not really expecting it to be like a huge deal. I see ETH like in a like a really high time frame. I think when we zoom out, like we may just view this entire activity over here is just like a gigantic accumulation, right? Like if you zoom far enough out, it's very possible that in the future, when you look back on this chart, this leg down may end up being viewed as a manipulation leg before price, ultimately trades a lot higher. Because once again, price is fractal, so it behaves on higher time frames the same way it behaves on lower time frames. Like if I saw this move, right, where we had this big move down, and we ran like all of this liquidity, like all these untapped lows, right? And then we moved back above, like that's a that's a really interesting setup. And then yeah, I would be measuring that as a manipulation leg. We're getting a little ahead of our way ahead of ourselves here. But if you were to project that out, you'd be looking at 9 to 10.4, and then like 14.4 to 17K, which seemed like pretty good levels to me. On a multi-year time horizon, it would not be shocking to me in the slightest if that's what happened. But in the short run here, just clean this up again. Yeah, in the shorter run here, pretty focused on where this entire accumulation is going before I really want to consider, heavily hedging. That looks safe to me all the way up to around like 3K or so. It's pretty common to get into the 1.5 area and sort of like reaccumulate. So in a reaccumulation and a manipulation on this level, this time frame might look pretty serious because you could have a move down here, sub 2K for sure before going back up. So something to keep in mind. But I think on the the smaller time frames, if we zoom in on this leg here for ETH, like this current price leg that we're at, there's a couple areas that stand out for me if I'm trying to measure this. I think that this is obviously like a pretty clear manipulation move to me. You have like a period of accumulation, right? You have fake out, and then you have a move down that runs all of the lows there. So depending on the time frame you're looking at, you could plot this here, or you could I don't know, you could come to a daily and maybe use this entire wick. But on the legs, I kind of like to use the 4-hour swings, and then I just see that as right about here. Right. So from that perspective, again, we hit the 2, pretty clean tap of the 2. Price retraces, basically tags the 1. So you're reaccumulating here in the 2 to 1 level. And then we move up and we tag the 4. But when I look to the left, like where is price going? Like what's between the 4 and the 5? Well, it's this high here at 2142. So I think this entire leg wants this high. I don't think we get any sort of severe correction until that high is taken. I think once that high is taken, I think all bets are kind of off. What's interesting to me is looking in this whole dealing range here from high to low. Like if I check out the mid range, which is going to be a pretty significant area of resistance, I think. So selling above the mid range in these areas is usually a pretty good bet. So above 22.33 is what we'd be looking at there. So that definitely makes sense to me. And again, this stuff is not in all science. There's a lot of art to it, if you will. Because someone could certainly say, okay, this entire zone here is accumulation, and then we've got on a weekly time frame, this entire swing here is probably like a big old manipulation leg. And that aligns pretty cleanly, I think, with the mid-range. Yeah. So that could be another interesting way of framing it as well, is to say, okay, this is all just accumulation in here, accumulation. This is the manipulation leg. Now we go up, accumulate, go up, retrace, and then 2.5, and then potentially lower. So I see a lot of confluence around the idea that we might go higher and then have a pretty severe pullback. We've got the 4 to 5 of this original consolidation after taking this key level. Like I said, legs going beyond 4 to 5 in one shot is not super common from what I've studied. You've got the two of this manipulation here. You know, we're in a premium above the mid range at 22.33, and then yeah, I mean this whole area of price here on the left is just a gigantic inefficiency, and like on the monthly chart, I have just an enormous monthly fair value gap for ETH. It's interesting that the mid range of that fair value gap is 23.50. So another interesting level to watch for. Maybe we go all the way up to 2350, 2400 or something, and then ultimately have the pullback there. I am pretty freaking long from a lot lower than here, so not super concerned with shorting or anything like that. It might be some hedging I would do, some scenarios. Like if we take these highs, right, and then, you know, kind of do something like that. Like I would definitely consider putting a hedge on a retrace there. I think ultimately, if that's the end of the leg and we want to sort of reaccumulate and, you know, start a new leg up, a good place to do it from would be this is a weekly breaker here, basically. So wouldn't shock me at all if price, you know, retests this, I mean, 1530 to 1730 level. Probably a situation where it wouldn't go very deep into that area. Famous last words. But that would be an interesting place to accumulate spot if you are kind of on the sidelines right now and looking for a place to get in. And again, like this entire move so far is just like higher highs and higher lows. So a move up here and then a, you know, retrace down beginning of next year would just be, you know, similar setup, possibly just another higher low and a good opportunity to get long. If I zoom in like a lot more on ETH now, and I'm kind of thinking about where and how I might want to frame a trade this week. I definitely think that the draw on liquidity is up here and beyond up here, right? I think it's actually the 21.45 high, and then possibly those mid ranges above. So I see like really strong draws above. I'm not sure that we just go straight away and take these from here though. Like, and I don't see a setup for a trade here. I think an interesting setup for a trade could be like a short-term short near the top here. Like when I looked at this on the hourly, we had kind of a accumulation manipulation and then like a structure break, right? So this leg down, like we're currently in a downtrend right now, and this could just be a lower high before ultimately reaching lower. We tapped into this small area of demand, which is a pretty critical area, right? You can see we tapped that. This area is really important because this is the area that gave us the move that broke the July high. and not just broke the July high. Like this is also a structural break, right? This was like a very, very, very big move for ETH because prior to that taking place, we were in this higher time frame, downtrend, right? So now that we got to close above that level, now we've shifted structure to the upside. The question is like, where do we get in on this leg? If you're really, really long-term bullish, you're hoping for a retrace down in here and then we go up. As I've said, crypto is sometimes not that kind with the entries, but like this is a great sign. It means ultimately I think we go a lot higher, just maybe not right now. But on the the lower time frame, we got to bounce from that level, right? Strong bounce, of course. I don't know that this level is enough to send us to these highs. And we also didn't get a full move to the 2.5. And I think that zone is also really important because the sort of full accumulation, the full demand zone, right? Like there's like a higher time frame area of demand here. Like this is really on the daily level, right? Like, so you see that area we highlighted on the 4-hour doesn't exist on the daily. So I think that's a move that's sufficient for us to give us this bounce here, but I'm not sure that we're going to get a new high from that move. So you could frame a short where this box is your draw on liquidity, this demand. You've identified this as your sort of accumulation manipulation leg, right? Now we've started this downtrend, and then you have like this confluence between the 2.5 and the demand here. And if this is correct, like we really shouldn't be taking 2100 or so on this current leg up. I was planning on punting along this week if we opened. Let's talk about that a little bit actually, because when I frame my week, I'm doing all the high time frame stuff I'm talking about. My monthly candle is guiding me, for most of the month. The question is like, where is this monthly candle going? I don't think you have to be a rocket scientist to identify that this monthly candle probably at some point wants this 2143 level. Doesn't mean it's guaranteed, but it means that like having a long bias on your kind of multi-day trades or multi-week trades, targeting that is a good idea. So when you have your monthly bias, right, you're kind of looking at your weekly bias next. We had a bit of a doji candle last week, right? So sometimes when you get these candles that just range in the middle, they don't give you a ton of information. But the prior week's candle, right? You were basically assuming that last week's candle was going to go for the prior week's high and then also the monthly high, but we didn't get that. Still, though, in the context of the monthly, I'm looking for a long. I'm looking for a long, at least to 2143. And like I said, I think you could make an argument for longing up to 2240 or 2350 or so, because those are mid-range levels of higher time frame price legs, and those levels on really high time frames like supersede short-term price action, and you sometimes don't get a reversal in price on the higher swing until price moves into a discount. And again, like what I was talking about there is this is like a very high time frame swing, so until price gets into a premium, above the 50%, you often are not going to see like a sustained reversal. And then we also talked about the monthly fair value gap also having its consequent encroachment around, or fancy way of saying the mid range of that. That's also around that level. So that was 2353 or so. So I think price up here, good chance we reverse. I think framing a long from here is pretty dangerous. Like as I said, it is certainly possible we could just take it from here. Certainly possible, but like it's not really how I frame my trades. Yeah, like if I'm going to be long, my ideal long setup for me going into this week was like, okay, like yeah, I want to see this kind of little move up to bait, but then I want to run all these lows into this demand, get people shorting, and then kind of come and take that. That was my ideal long setup. Now might be a better place to look for shorts, if anything. So I'd be identifying this zone here, which is basically your hourly order block. Where's there we go. Be identifying this zone here. This zone here should hold if the the short thesis is sort of correct. So you'd be looking for maybe a run of that low, and then you're trying to enter, maybe sometime on Tuesday. Oftentimes, like you're not really taking a trade on Monday. You're kind of waiting to see how the Monday range plays out and using that to frame the rest of your week. So if you sort of have a bearish bias, you might be looking for a Monday accumulation. You might be looking for some sort of initial move above on Tuesday or Wednesday. There's different weekly profiles where your low is set on different days of the week, but you might be expecting a high on the Tuesday. If you're a short bias in the week, you're getting in above the Monday range, getting in on like premium above the daily open, or however you want to frame your trade. And then again, you're targeting this area of demand here. So it's my current thought on ETH. Again, I'm very long ETH. I think the market is fairly complacent on ETH at the moment. It just kind of reminds me of what happened this summer, and I think. I don't know. I think there's a good case to be made that ETH outperforms almost everything this cycle when you factor in the ETF and potential institutional order flows. It's not something I would have none of in my portfolio. That's for sure. Altcoins, on the other hand, I think are starting to they're starting to look weak. Solana is not as strong as it has been. You can kind of just see that looking at the structure here. We haven't technically broken structure yet. This does look kind of gross. You do kind of see a little head and shoulders type thing forming here. So definite possibility. Where is Sol? It's in this gigantic monthly fair value gap. It's such a big gap that you have to kind of look at the the mid range of the gap for any sort of signal there. And you can see that we are currently rejecting off the mid range of that gap. We also have the we also have a weekly fair value gap here, which we can also frame. And then, on the daily, you can see we're basically rejecting off the mid range of these gaps. So we have a setup here, I think, for a higher time frame pullback. We have had a huge price move. We've run all of these like critical highs, right? People are up quite a bit from the lows. It's been a big move. So not an amazing time to pile in. I did buy a little bit of spot because I don't have enough of a spot allocation. I figured if we went higher, we were gonna go higher off of this zone here. So I did buy some spot last week, around the mid range of this zone. I had some limit orders around like $55 or so. So I got a little bit of spot there, just in case. I do have a feeling this is probably going lower. I think what would be an interesting setup though would be for us to kind of actually, you know, do a little fake breakdown and run this high and then go lower. I think that would put in a nice sort of I mean, we already do kind of have a triple divergence here on the 12 hour, but on the daily it'd be almost like a 3 drives pattern, 1 2 3, if that were to play out. And that would be an interesting top. These altcoins, in my experience, like they're hard to short because they sort of look like they're breaking down, but they actually just run back up so many times and wreck you. Like OP is like a great example of this. Earlier this year, you put in this high, right, and then similar to Solana, you had this really impulsive move down that left a gap, and a lot of people shorted here on the retest of this demand, but price actually ran not just that demand zone, but that high, and kind of nuked everybody before finally breaking down. And then if you were patient enough on that entry, you know, you were able to sort of get in somewhere in this like final supply leg, depending on how you frame this out. Kind of tricky to see on a weekly chart, but this was like an interesting leg because this move up was basically the last move up that actually gave you a break of structure. And then there's all sorts of ways to frame this trade. I think if you zoom in, there's probably some fair value gaps you could enter on the 4 hour or something. That way ultimately filled. Yeah, I mean, it's very, very micro, but price just kind of retested that. Can't even draw this damn thing. Yeah. So, yeah, you had to go all the way down to the 4 hour for your entry there, but that was like an interesting little entry. You could have almost top ticked that move with that. Another way of looking at this is just you know, just could do like a OTE, optimal trade entry, off of this leg down. Enter 0.61, 0.79. You get like basically a perfect tap of the 0.79. So you're looking for some sort of area in this zone to get in, and that gave you a really nice, really nice entry. You actually could have held that all the way down. But yeah, shorting altcoins, pretty tricky. Matic is something that is on my brain as like a potential hedge, where I can stay long Ethereum but short some other altcoin that I think is weak via perps. And again, like we get this similar kind of head and shoulders pattern forming. But yeah, we had a similar thing on that OP chart as well. Keep in mind, these patterns like to yoink people, but yeah, 12 hour fair value gap. But like I said, I mean, we're still technically holding structure here, so wouldn't be surprised to see one more big run up in Matic. I don't see anything super interesting on the. I guess we did did have a monthly fair value gap there that was untested. The weekly chart, yeah, the weekly charts. This is your key zone here. This weekly order block. Yeah, this is the zone that gave you that really nasty structural break. So kind of rejecting off that again currently. But yeah, this doesn't mean I think Matic's going to new lows. I mean, you've seen like just like a really enormous move up. Like you could even just see like a tap of this weekly fair value gap here before going higher. Wouldn't surprise me. But if you snag an entry up here, it'd still be like a 25% move. So interesting possibility there. Yeah. So nothing to short at the moment. Like you could be aggressive and just say like, okay, this is a high time frame area of supply, and I see this fair value gap here, so I'm just going to short in this gap. Like you could get an entry there. I mean, maybe I might even take like a small entry there, small limit order there. I just think it's a little scary in reality to enter a short there before you even have a break of those lows. Yeah, how long we've been going right now? Okay, yeah, I'll probably wrap this up pretty soon. This went a little longer than I intended. I could talk about this all day. But one more, quick thought. I mean, the strongest, one of the strongest areas of the crypto market continues to be these like AI coins. I still think having no AI coins in your portfolio this cycle is pretty suicidal. Render is sort of like the real kingmaker of the AI coins. It looks pretty damn bullish to me. This was a huge level. $3. We had a weekly close above. Looks good, man. I mean, I don't see any reason why this can't just go way past all-time highs. To be honest, obviously the volatility in these things is ridiculous. So it's kind of want to just DCA in these things on like big pullbacks whenever you get the opportunity, because you can just kind of feel the FOMO and just YOLO in on one level and then immediately eat a 30% drawdown, and that's no fun. I think where a good entry might be. Yeah, so maybe somewhere in this gap, sub 280, 250 is like a pretty good level if we're blessed enough to get that. Might look at just like the entire zone here, 50% of that. Yeah, I don't know if we should never say I don't know if we'll get that level, because that never ages well with altcoins. But yeah, I don't know. I think pretty good chance that alts at some point. I'm not telling people to sell alts. Like selling altcoins after they've just broken out of 2-year accumulation ranges is pretty stupid. But the pullbacks can be nasty. It'd be interesting to see how Total 3 closes up the month. As of now, pretty strong move above that critical high. I mean, there's just so much room for upside. Just a couple 100% just to go back to all-time highs. So yeah, I mean, I over allocated early and allocated very, very heavy in Bitcoin and Ethereum, mostly Ethereum. Just because I figured, if I was wrong about the start of the cycle, well, yeah, it would suck to lose money, but I would have the optionality to rotate from like ETH into some like really high quality altcoins. Like if I thought, with a lot of confidence that the cycle low is in. Alternatively, I was anticipating just being able to rotate from ETH into alts like after the cycle was already in progress. And yeah, at this point, I just really want to see ETH ETF and a big pump off of that before going into alts too heavy. That being said, like I have started buying bags, and I said in my friend tech chat, I've started buying Blur. Nothing in the chart that's like amazing at the moment, but this is just. I'm pretty bullish on NFTs longer term. I know everybody hates them right now, but they're coming back. This is a good team. It's a good product. NFTs are pretty hard to invest in, and I think a lot of people are just going to want to buy a coin. I think the worst is over for Blur. Like, sure, it's entirely possible. Like, we could still just bleed out down here for a while and even revisit 20 cents or something, but I think eventually it goes up. I think it's this whole zone I'm just going to be DCAing into. I think the upside is it's just way too high to not have. Not sure what other good NFT plays there are, to be honest. So if you have any ideas, please let me know. Yeah, I'm going to stop it right there. I might do this again tomorrow and just talk a little more about the kind of alts I'm looking at and where I might be getting in and just where I'm putting my portfolio. So, yeah, I don't know if this was useful to you guys. I don't know if this is like horribly boring. I don't know if anybody sat here and watched me ramble for an hour and 17 minutes, but if this is good for people and useful and people find it valuable, then I can do more of these, because all I did was just sit down and just top of mind take you through live like what I do pretty much every morning. Although Monday mornings are a little different for me because I'm planning out the whole week, in addition to kind of looking at what's happening on the day. So yeah, if you enjoyed this, let me know in the comments. Do subscribe if you're not already and you want more of this. Friendly reminder, I am hanging out in the Alpha Pod Discord. I have a thread in there, Magic Lines, if you want to talk chart and TA and price action and that whole sort of thing with me and a bunch of other people. You can find those links at alfalfapod.com. Yeah, well, thanks for listening, guys. I will see you around.